Hello, everyone. My name is Shelly Jackson, and I'm taking POS 435 Women in Politics. And I'm here today to talk to you all about my final project. Now, I chose option number one, which addressed political ambition gap between men and women, as well as how how the difference in between the how the difference in the gap affects public policy in the United States, and following up to that, how what a solution can be for that. So, in my personal opinion, and through my research, I have found that I think that the most compelling theory to this argument is the gender psyche and how that plays a huge role in the gender gap. And I say this because underneath the gender psyche, we have other several different components that make it up, like traditional family roles, which really pertain to the outdated expectations society has for women and men. We also have the double bind, which downplays the women and never really makes them have an equal balance. They're either too independent or too connected, too masculine or too feminine. And also the masculinized ethos, which is a huge factor that falls under gender psyche because when women decide to run for politics or if they decide to run for an office, they have to gain support from many different institutions. And if we look at the different institutions, a lot of them are ran by men. So the men don't have to do any extra work on gaining that respect, but as we often see, the women have to work twice as hard to do. So this is why I think the gender psyche is the most compelling theory on why there is a huge gender gap between men and women and their political ambition to run for office. Now, moving on to public policies, I personally think that one of the biggest public policies that will be affected by these differences are the lack of representation, the lack of progression in representation. So America is known as a progressive country. We are always trying to stride, and we've made great strides to helping out minorities and women. However, with this big political gap, if it stays stagnant, what happens? That means that we're not having women stakeholders continue to be stakeholders. That means we're not having women come up and be change makers, and we're not having ultimately the women represented, which leads to my second public policy. If this gender gap stays the same, and we're not having women in the office, then how are those issues that are pertaining to women's issues being addressed? This means that we have males who I'm sure are extremely competent speaking on women's issues, but they are not going to bring the same perspective, the same experience, the same mindset that a woman is going to. And that's why it is important to have a woman in office or to have many women in office. Now, the last public policy that I would like to address is the fact that we can use the disadvantage to our advantage. And what I mean by that is using substantive representation and descriptive representation to help create positive social change in communities. So the books have been talking a lot about how women have been making great strides in policy and the political arena, but things don't happen overnight. So what do we do in the meantime while behind the scenes those strides are being made? We can still try to create change by reaching out to substantive representatives and have them advocate for us and have the substantive representatives and descriptive representatives work together and come together with the consensus of knowing that this is what the ultimate goal is, that the ultimate goal is to help women get to those higher positions and to address those women's issues. But in the meantime, until we get all of those descriptive representation, it is important to have substantive representation on your side as well. And I think instead of seeing them as separate, we can do what we can to bring them together to create positive social change for everyone. Now, pertaining to the last question on what the solution can be, I personally think that women, I personally think that women going out and reaching out to the younger population of girls is going to help create that ambition and create that inspiration to go ahead and pursue politics. If we have some of our women stakeholders, some of our political leaders in the community go out and into other communities and talk to girls one-on-one, hold more workshops, hold more opportunities for girls to have the advantage to learn about politics, then I think that would be a great way to get them more involved to create a better future for everyone. Thank you for watching.